Hello, I'm Grant Bartley. To save humanity from itself, we must get sustainable economic processes working. What form might these processes take? In my last video, I argued that alongside the market economy, we need to globally develop a social economy, that is, a green economy which works to provide the means of life for people as a right. Explicitly in order to relieve the profit-based pressure on the market to continually increasingly and inefficiently used resources. Providing for needs is its central justification. Provision as a human right is one of its mottos. My ideal is that the resource-providing social system will grow to increasingly provide the means of subsistence for the world as a basic human right. That would be proper human flourishing. I mentioned in the first video that external funding will be needed to seed the formation of a global social provision economy. This could come from voluntary contributions or investment, and/or by some form of taxation. A provision economy could even temporarily be a profit-based system, financing its growth by selling some of what it makes and does. A similar idea is for people to be shareholders in aspects of this economy. Thus, the social economy could even work on a competitive and perhaps a semi-capitalist basis, maybe right up until it becomes independently functioning. A provision economy must make stuff to provide with, both for others and for its own workforce. So it needs to build itself up. To fulfill its purpose, a social economy must create its own production and distribution system. Any economy must possess the resources from which everything necessary for life can be made. A civilized, self-sufficient economy needs to work from beneath the ground up, with the resources necessary for mineral extraction, up to farming facilities, across to other primary resource production, such as housing and other capabilities for building, and finally develop the rest of the means of the producing and distribution of resources, everything necessary to build a society, through to the production and distribution of high tech. The social system can only hope to succeed in supplying our needs if it comes to run mines, farms, factories, transport, and shops. It isn't even going to get off the ground if it doesn't own land. And as it grows, that economy must continue to develop its resource production, processing, and distribution. We should always remember, however, that the social system is about fulfilling needs rather than desires, with a little extra for luxuries, and for useful but not necessary things. Sustainability is the core motivator of this model. The raw ideal is to make and take only what's necessary for thriving. Desires can be left to the market side of the economy. If people want a lot more stuff than is basically provided for them, in other words, conspicuous wealth, then they'll have to work within the free market. The market will provide opportunities for status-needy people who feel they must be rich, which is most people. No change in the market there, then. But it also shows that no change in human nature is required for the dual economy. The only significant difference in a dual economy from today's market monopoly is that nobody is forced by need to make the stuff that no one needs. Here, people will only make and sell far beyond their needs if they have a strong desire for status or some other strong psychological motivating factor. In due course, the primary function of the market may become raising living standards above the subsistence freely offered by the social system. The function of the market will be mainly to produce luxury goods. There will be trade between the two economies. There will also need to be means of exchange within the provision economy itself. A mature social economy's wealth could be rationed in various ways to prevent people from taking more than they need or is fair. My first thought is to develop a social currency using cheap tech or even the low-tech option, even ration books, made from recycled paper, naturally. As the provision economy nears self-sufficiency, a large part of its capacity of production beyond material self-sufficiency can be diverted to external provision. Some of the excess capacity beyond sufficiency should be kept for internal growth and for internal material improvement through research and development. The social system's workers themselves have a right to rising standards of living in sustainable ecological ways. But first, the bigger question needs to be answered. What political form should the social provision economy have? What might a provision economy look like in general form? A social economy could, for example, be a state or a state-like organisation, like a welfare state, but one that's aiming for full self-sufficiency and thus independence as a fully functioning state. A welfare state is in many ways a good example of a social provision economy, except in one vital respect. Welfare states are funded by taxing the free market. Since it relies on the market, a welfare system cannot limit the market as it grows. Also, the tax burden needed to run a welfare state often irritates the people who unwillingly pay for it with the fruits of their free market exploitation. Taxation stress limits are socio-economic fault lines, meaning that overtaxation is disastrous on a political scale. This problem is potentially unlimited when hooked into the potentially unlimited uses of a welfare system. There is no upper limit to what a welfare state could theoretically provide medically for its clients, for example. So, a simple welfare state is an inadequate concept for our purposes. A provision economy must differ from a welfare state, at least by evolving away from its dependence on the market. This means as a fully functioning state, it must come to itself provide the resources for itself, as well as providing the resources necessary to fulfill its purpose of mass need alleviation. It's vital that the social economy evolves away from dependence on market funding, otherwise it will remain only a welfare state, with no ecological gain since it financially depends on the market to operate. Another potentially plausible model for a social economy would be a green command economy. That is, with its processes commanded from the top down. Like a welfare state, a command economy has a central nervous system, an intricate bureaucracy involved in organizing the distribution of resources for society. But unlike a welfare state, a command economy also organizes the production of the goods it distributes. Should we want our social-oriented economy to be a command economy? Unfortunately, the most glaring examples to us of command economies are the bloody communist attempts at social provision. But a command economy is not obliged to follow communist models. Ancient Egypt sometimes had a command economy too, as utilised by Joseph, head government grain controller from the Book of Genesis. And the Egyptian economy was theocratic rather than egalitarian, justified by Osiris or Horus rather than by Marx or Mao. Nor is it necessary in a command economy that all commands come from the top. With any command structure, a better model than a simple pyramid involves a high distribution of responsibility across the system, which adds intelligence and flexibility into the system. Power for decisions is best placed on the ground and localized. Localizing choice is putting power into the hands of people who know what they're doing because they do it. In any complex social structure, there must be some body invested with ultimate decision-making power for those tricky disputes. But generally speaking, the lighter its influence, the better. Unfortunately, history indicates a strong tendency for the centralization of power. In the old days, they used to call the monopoly of power tyranny. A major part of the role of the market in a dual economic system is to minimize the possibility of a monopoly of power. A more liberal model for a provision economy is a network of provision-oriented systems formed by societies in association. In other words, a federation. A provision federation would not take most commands from any one centre, but would instead be coordinated by a desire to cooperate. We might say by a saintly, invisible hand. There could be many different provision societies and leaders, just as there are many corporations and CEOs, or many states and rulers. As long as they cooperate to fulfill the provision mandate, this would be a much better system than through any central state in many ways. Clearly, there are many ways the social half of the dual economy could work. I don't know which would be best. The point is to test them and to see how they do. A real attempt to sew up the wound of our economics of excess will probably involve several approaches, wisely incorporating what we can of what's useful. Quick political revolution is unlikely to aid social stability. Violent revolution means bloodshed, and usually eventually totalitarianism and a rapid increase in mortality rate. A revolutionary fast fix for the global economy would probably be as disastrous as the disaster it would be ignited to prevent, only shifting the epicenter. My aim is to see the good in society grow, in the sense of both expand and improve. People starving and dying as a result of overthrowing a functioning economy is disastrous. So, our search for social stability, which is the reason for our revolution in the first place, must instead involve a gradual development away from our present way of doing business, organically implementing long-term processes. The image I have is of the social economy growing like a tree. So this is only revolution in the sense that it aims to produce radical or fundamental change. The aim of the dual economy is humanity's resource use reduction will happen in the least unpleasant way we can engineer, continually building bridges between the actual state of the world and the world we want to create. The idea is to peacefully instigate a careful change in the nature of the global economy to sustainable provision. Best to think evolution, not revolution. Having said this, I think we'd better start acting soon. Yet things will probably have to get significantly worse in the developed world before the powerful take the need for economic reconfiguration seriously enough to start doing it. I hope by then it won't be a scandal of too little too late on an apocalyptical scale. The most direct solution to our expanding resource use is rapid population cutting. If you think a two-system economy is an extreme solution, consider what we'd have to do to implement global population control before Gaia, Chaos and Malthus conspire to do it for us. Tough choice, do you think? Since the human race already has the resources to feed, house, educate, and to a basic extent medicate everyone, doing so is a matter of setting up the right processes. The rest is a matter of political or popular will. The achievement of our revolutionary goal, or at least moving towards it, becomes an issue of change management. Whatever combination of forms we opt to start aiming for, the first step in achieving good social goals is communicating the goals into society. When a consensus of critical enough mass has been achieved, a realistic working towards not destroying the biosphere will commence. I once heard a rabbi give a good criterion for a desirable society, which makes it a good standard for gauging social health. In a good society, he said, citizens will be rich enough psychologically as well as materially to be able to give generously to others. But with a provision economy, I'm talking about an economic process geared towards generosity. By this reasoning, this would be the healthiest sort of economy possible. Perhaps there are better ways of tackling our world's growing environmental problems and resource divisions than a dual economic system. But in any future we would want individual action to be as free as possible, and the stable provision of everyone's basic needs. If you don't like my vision, think of something better. We need to start applying solutions to our economic inefficiency and waste as soon as we've thought them through. Indeed, by the time humanity takes the need for global economic restructuring seriously enough to do it, in many ways it will be too late. So let's call this forward-thinking damage limitation. What hope do you want for our future? Do you want our darkening narcotic dreams moving towards global catastrophe? Or do you want a world of realistic hope, achieved through a mentality which strives for the good of humanity and a constitutional agenda which backs this up? Leading questions, I'll admit.